Looks like we are at time. Shall we get started this morning? Okay. Good morning and welcome to the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education's May 26th Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Tess Craker and I'm the chair of the committee. Today's meeting will be conducted in accordance to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. I do have a couple of announcements. First, I'd like to recognize Debbie Cochran, whose last day with the Bureau Chief was April 30th. As you all know, Debbie has led the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education since 2021, and her leadership has had a lasting impact on the Bureau and the students the Bureau serves. While we're sad to see her go, we are excited about her new appointment as Executive Director of California Education Interagency Council. It's a well-deserved opportunity that reflects her talent and dedication to public service. So on behalf of all of us, thank you, Debbie, for your leadership, partnership, and commitment. We all wish you every success in this next chapter. We also have a new committee member, Noah Zinner, who has been appointed to the DCA-appointed Consumer Advocate seat. He serves as Director of Litigation for the Project on Predatory Student Lending. So I just wanted to welcome you to the committee, Noah. Moving on to oh, absolutely. Have to follow the pains of where you're located here. Moving on to the routine welcome notes, advisory committee members are asked to state their name before speaking for the clarity of the official record and to remain on mute when not speaking to reduce any background noise. We will ensure that all committee member comments are heard before moving on to the next agenda item. State rules also require committee members to remain visible on camera during virtual meetings. If appearing on camera is technologically not possible, the member must state the reason. The advisory committee welcomes public comment on any item in today's agenda. Public comment will be requested for each agenda item before any action is taken. Instructions will be provided at the appropriate times for both in-person and remote participants. So each commenter will have 3 minutes to share their remarks, and each attendee may provide one public comment per agenda item. And committee members, just a reminder, if everybody could remain on mute when not speaking, that would be wonderful to eliminate any background noise. Thank you. For agenda item number 2, public comment on items not on the agenda, say that twice, the advisory committee has set a total time limit of 30 cumulative minutes for public comment. So 30 cumulative minutes on agenda item 2. For all other agenda items, public comment is limited to 20 cumulative minutes. So each individual participant will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. A Department of Consumer Affairs moderator will assist with receiving public comments during this meeting, so not to worry if that's not captured for everybody. I want to remind all speakers to please stay on topic and keep your comments within the allotted time. And if members have a question for the advisory, if members of the public, have a question of the advisory committee or the Bureau as opposed to a comment, you're welcome to submit it by email. That email address is bppe@dca.ca.gov. And I'll repeat that throughout just as a friendly reminder. So with that, we're going to move to agenda 1, and that's the establishment of a quorum. It's our first agenda item, and it's introductions and the establishment of the quorum, as I said. So when called upon, if everybody could please introduce themselves with the full name and constituency represented on the committee. Richie, can you please conduct the roll call and announce quorum?
Yes. I will start. Tess Craker.
Present, and chair, yes.
Lee Farron is not present. Kansan Chu.
Here, I'm a public member.
Thank you. Joseph Holt.
Hello, present, and I am an institutional representative.
And Robin Smith.
Robin Smith. Thank you.
Michael Zimmerman.
Present, and I'm an institutional member. Thank you.
Noah Zenner.
Present. This is Noah Zenner.
And that gives us 6 members present, which is a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richie. So we can now that a quorum has been established, we can move to agenda item 2, and that is public comment on items not on the agenda. So please note that, again, the committee can't discuss or take action on any material raised during this period except to consider whether it should be placed on a future agenda. Public comment is intended to provide information to the advisory committee, and it's not a dialogue between the committee and the public. So the committee's only action today is to listen, and we definitely want to do that and determine whether a topic warrants future decision. If you wish to comment on public agenda, please wait until we reach that specific item. Comments at this time only for matters on today's agenda. We're now ready to open the queue for public comment. And as a reminder, again, the email if it's a form of a question. DCA moderator, would you please open the queue for public comment?
Hi, this is a moderator. If you would like to make a comment, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're joining us via a call-in, you may press *3 to raise your hand. If you are on a mobile device, the hand icon may be behind 3 dots, other options. Once your name is called on, you'll see an unmute request on your screens. You may press that to unmute and make your comment. And if you are a call-in public member, you may press *6 to unmute yourself. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no comments or raised hands. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll move on to agenda number 3, which is review and approval of the February 4th, 2026 advisory committee minutes. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee at this time?
Move to approve. This is Caston True.
Okay, so that was a motion. Do we have a first? Or that is the first, sorry. How about a second?
I second. This is Robin Smith.
Thank you, Robin. And all in favor? We go through the roll, correct? Yes. And Richie, is that something that you can assist with at this time?
Yes. So Tess Crakier.
Aye.
Lee's absent still. Joseph Hope.
Yes.
Kansen Chu.
Aye.
Michael Zimmerman.
Aye.
Robin Smith. Noah Zenner.
Aye.
The motion's passed.
Wonderful, thank you. Would you please open the queue for public comment, DCA moderator?
Hi, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a call-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. See no comments. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Richie. Could you please record that vote?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. With that, we will move on to agenda number 4. Thank you for moving on. So we'll have remarks from the representative of the Department of Consumer Affairs, that's Lucia Salazar. Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relation, will be presenting this agenda item.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, advisory committee members and staff. My name is Lucia Saldivar, and I'm the Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide an update from the department. Firstly, I wanted to wish everyone a very happy Public Service Recognition Week. DCA would like to recognize and show its appreciation to the dedicated staff across all boards and bureaus. We are grateful to our employees who go above and beyond daily to carry out the consumer protection mission. On behalf of the Department of Consumer Affairs, thank you for your service to California. We are also excited to share that this spring, DCA relaunched the Enforcement Academy Training Program, which had not been held since the COVID-19 pandemic. This 4-day training program offered DCA Board and Bureau enforcement staff an overview of the enforcement process, investigations, complaint intake, and formal discipline, as well as the opportunity to learn best practices and make connections with other programs. Our March session included staff participation from over 20 different boards and bureaus, and we're planning additional academies in August and October of this year. DCA's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Executive Steering Committee recently selected 15 employees from throughout DCA to participate as members of the inaugural DEI subcommittee. This subcommittee will meet bi-monthly to develop and implement multiple initiatives and goals to promote positive organizational impact. The first meeting of the subcommittee is scheduled for July 31st of this year, and we will continue to highlight their milestones and accomplishments. We also wanted to remind members about the upcoming reorganization of DCA's oversight agency. On July 1st, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency will be split into 2 new entities: the California Housing and Homelessness Agency and the Business and Consumer Services Agency. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs, which will be among one of the 8 departments. DCA continues to participate in multiple work groups on the logistics required to transition the new agency, and will continue to keep board and bureau leadership apprised. To close, thank you so much, and I am available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none, we are now ready to open the queue for public comment. And of course, as a reminder, these are for comments only. Questions will be sent in via email.
Hi, this is
DCA
Amara.
moderator. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. If you would like to make a comment, you may click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you are joining us by call-in, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no comments. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Okay, wonderful. Let's see. So we will now thank you and move on to agenda number 5. And there are multiple subparts to this agenda item. We're likely to take a break at a midway point, just so everybody has that for a point of reference. After each section, we'll also offer an opportunity for public comment, as well as from the committee. So let's move to 5A, the IT system project update presented by Jason Pision, Deputy Director, Chief Information Officer, will be presenting. My apologies if I've mispronounced any of the names. I'll work on that for future as well.
No problem. Thank you, Chair Craker. It's nice to be with you again. Hello, committee members. I am Jason Piccioni, the CIO for Department of Consumer Affairs, here to talk to you about the IT. The slide is marked IT system project, and it's all about IT system progress. What I have to update you on, presented updates over the past year regarding conversion from our legacy system sale to the current Connect system, and the wonderful work that the private post staff and IT teams have been doing in that area. And the focus of today's update is around external engagement. For the past 2.5 months, Private Post has engaged with over a dozen external stakeholders, institutions, institutional representatives, to perform user research and critical partner testing for our external functionalities of the Connect system. Specifically, the ability to have access and view and in some cases edit institutional information, as well as view and pay annual fees on via the Connect platform, as well as submit STRIF quarterly assessments. Those testing groups have been done in an alpha group, which took place in March and April, and then a beta group, which took place thereafter. Overall, the response to the testing and the functionalities that were presented was off the charts great. The institution representatives were very generous in their time, and we thank them all. They were generous in their time and generous with their feedback. They gave us both positive feedback as well as constructive feedback to build upon. So the next step after the successful testing is to incorporate the feedback that we received and open it up to the general institution population. That is intended over the course of the next few months to open that up in a soft launch capacity with instruction, outreach to institutions, and with assistance to get folks from those institutions appropriately authenticated to the Connect system so they could do those things, everything that I talked about, see institutional information, submit annual fees, as well as STRIF quarterly assessments, which, by the way, in all instances where the testing groups had those fees or quarterly assessments to submit, those were all done successfully. So the test was in production with those folks. So it went well, and the next steps will be outreach to get how you get folks in the Connect system authenticated to act for your institutions, and those will be within outreach campaigns over the next couple 2 to 3 months. I like to be transparent and set expectations. And so what we will have with those institutional reps is one external account will be able to see one institution. So if I were an institutional rep that potentially had several institutions with approved through the bureau, you would work with the bureau to figure out how to accommodate those multiple institutions. So right now it's a one-to-one scenario, but we're working to make the multi-institution view a reality, and that's the feedback we got from some of the institutional alpha and beta testers. So again, great feedback, and we're working to incorporate that. But the accounts, the ability to see information, the ability to submit required quarterly and annual submissions is there, and it's solid functionality. So we will be releasing that in the next few months. That's the heart of the update. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jason. And it's pronounced Piccioni?
Piccioni, yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before we move to questions, we should note for the record that Lee Farron has joined the meeting as well. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning. Thanks for your patience, guys. Apologies.
Lee. Okay, with that, do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none, DCA moderator, would you be able to open the queue for public comment? And as a reminder, these would be comments only.
Of course, thank you so much. This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're joining us by calling, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. See none, I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have agenda number 5B. It's a licensing update. Manila Van Many, Deputy Bureau Chief of Licensing and Administration, and also Nicole Dragoo, Licensing Chief, will be presenting this agenda item.
Good morning, committee members. I'm Manila Vangmeni, Deputy Bureau Chief over Licensing and Administration, and joining me today is Nicole Dragoo, our Licensing Chief. Together, we'll walk you through the licensing update for the third quarter of this fiscal year. It's been another active period for the licensing unit. Our team has been focused on 3 key areas: improving clarity and accessibility for institutions, strengthening consistency in our review processes, and preparing for upcoming statutory changes. We continued refining our licensing webinars based on participant feedback that we received in Q2. We refined the structure and the content of the workshop, incorporated plain language and clearer and more practical explanations. These improvements make the workshop more intuitive and easier for participants to navigate. We also partnered closely with Jason Piccioni and his team, the OIS folks, through the Connect alpha and beta testing for STRIP and annual fee functionality. This allowed us to identify issues early, strengthen user experience, and ensure the Bureau is well positioned for smoother implementation. So we're going to be very busy with all the outreach that Jason has talked about earlier. Internally, we've made progress in standardizing workflows and refining procedures to support more consistent and efficient applications review. At the same time, the team contributed to the sunset review efforts and began preparing for potential changes associated with AB 2771. Throughout these efforts, the team has remained focused on licensing quality institutions, and I appreciate the team's adaptability and commitment. As always, we welcome your feedback on what you'd like to see included in future reports. With that, I'll pass it to Nicole.
Thank you, Manila, and good morning, committee members. This next slide provides a snapshot of our application activity as the end of Q3. We continue to receive a steady stream of applications across all categories, though some shifts occurred this quarter. We approved 13 new full applications this quarter, bringing our fiscal year-to-date total to 35. We approved 6 full renewal applications, bringing our year-to-date total to 53. At the end of Q3, we reduced pending full renewals to 28, the lowest number of pending renewals in the past 3 fiscal years. This reflects progress in addressing backlog and improving processing flow. Most of our application volume continues to come from verifications of exempt status and change requests. By the end of Q3, we have processed 190 exemption verifications and 123 change requests in the current fiscal year. Overall, application activity remains steady, with some expected fluctuations based on application complexity and the timing of submissions to the Bureau. Next slide, please. This slide shows some short-term variation in application timeframes for Q3. For new full applications, we saw a temporary increase in processing times this quarter. The primary driver was the approval of several older and more complex applications. Approving these applications is an important step in finalizing aging applications, and we expect to see more stable averages as newer applications move through the process. For new accredited approvals, timeframes also increased slightly. This appears to be related to the timing of submission of accreditor documentation, which must be received before these applications can move forward. We're exploring ways to strengthen communication with accreditors and support more timely receipt of required materials. For full renewals, the applications approved this quarter were received prior to the implementation of our streamlined review process. As a result, the efficiency from this process is not yet reflected in this quarter's data, but we anticipate those improvements becoming more visible in upcoming quarters. Overall, we continue to make progress in reducing older applications and stabilizing our workload. Our focus remains on improving consistency and predictability in processing times while maintaining thorough and high-quality reviews. Next slide, please. At the end of Q3, the Bureau oversaw a total of 1,487 institutional locations statewide, including 853 main campuses, 309 branch campuses, and 325 satellite campuses. By approval type, 395 institutions were approved through accreditation, 460 holding full non-accredited approvals, 147 registered as out-of-state institutions, and no institutions are operating under conditional approval. These numbers remain relatively stable, indicating a consistent post-secondary landscape, even as institutions continue adapting to new systems and requirements. Next slide, please. During Q3, the Bureau hosted 3 virtual licensing workshops with sessions held in January, February, and March. Interest and participation remained strong. We had a total of 92 attendees, and survey responses continued to provide valuable insight into their experiences. Overall, the survey feedback was overwhelmingly positive. More than 95% of respondents reported high satisfaction, frequently citing the clarity of the presentations, the step-by-step walkthroughs of each application section, and the value of being able to directly engage with staff. Many noted that the workshops made the licensing process feel more manageable. We also made small but effective improvements to outreach, including increasing visibility of the workshops through routine staff communications, which helped ensure institutions were consistently aware of upcoming sessions. Respondents also identified some areas for improvement. The most common request was for access to the slide deck after the session, clearer orientation at the start, and more tailored guidance for different types of institutions. In response, we are implementing several improvements. We plan to make the slide deck available on the Bureau's website, continue simplifying and clarifying presentation content, and exploring adding practical demonstrations of the application process. We will continue to monitor engagement and feedback to ensure the workshops remain useful, accessible, and responsive to stakeholder needs. In closing, the Q3 reflects continued progress in both operational improvements, reducing older application backlog, and improving stakeholder engagement. We've made meaningful strides in increasing consistency in our reviews while continuing to provide clearer, more accessible guidance through workshops and outreach efforts. At the same time, we are actively preparing for upcoming statutory and system changes, including AB 2771, the Bureau's Sunset Bill, and the continued development of Connect to ensure the Bureau remains well-positioned to implement changes effectively. Our focus remains on supporting quality institutions, protecting students, and maintaining a stable and consistent regulatory environment. I want to thank the licensing team for their ongoing dedication and adaptability. We appreciate the advisory committee's continued engagement and feedback, and we look forward to building on this work in the coming quarter. Thank you very much. We are open for questions.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Manila. That was a wonderful report out. I appreciate that. Do we have any comments from committee members at this time? I did want to also, Tess Craker, comment and congratulate you for the lowest pending outcomes in 3 years. I know that that is most certainly not easily done and is a testament to all the hard work that's occurring. So nice job with that, down to 28, I think you had said. So just congratulations to you both and thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or from the committee members? Okay, hearing none, moderator, could we please open for public comment?
Absolutely. This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you are joining us by call-in, you may press *3 to raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning to make your comment. Alexandria, you're going to be seeing an unmute request on your screen. Please click on that to unmute and make your comment. Alexandria, if you are speaking, you're still muted. Please click on the prompt on your screen. You can click on that to make your comment.
Yes, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Alexandra Hernandez, and I'm commenting on behalf of International College. I just wanted to express, I hear that there are great things as far as processing timelines, but I wanted to express from an institutional perspective that we submitted 3 applications for change of educational objectives back in November of 2025. And I see on the website that it looks like the Bureau is still working on applications from September of 2024. I just wanted to comment again from an educational perspective or an institutional perspective that these delays I've seen since my start with International College over 3 years. The timeframes for processing these applications have increased dramatically, which from a school perspective causes our instructors or prospective instructors to sort of be in limbo. during this processing time frame. And so I'm just hoping that the Bureau continues to work towards decreasing these application timeframes. I also wanted to comment that when we originally submitted applications for change of educational objectives, we received notices that those applications have been received from the Bureau. We're no longer receiving those. And so again, just consistency in the procedures for when a school does submit these applications, it kind of causes concern on whether the applications have been received. And so that's my commentary. I thank you for all your hard work and just hope to continue to see these processing timelines decrease for efficiency of our institution and implementing new programs for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other comments. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you for the comments. And hearing no others, we will now move on to agenda number 5C, excuse me. That's the quality of education update. And that will be presented by, again, Manila Vonmeni, Deputy Bureau Chief of Licensing and Administration. So Manila will be presenting on this item.
Good morning, Manila Vongmeni stepping in for our Quality of Education Administrator, Ebony Santee, who is out today. Next slide. This quarter, we saw 2 changes. One institution became accredited, bringing the total to 27. And one institution received a provisional approval, bringing this to 24. We still have 16 institutions that closed or their approval expired. 2 exempt, 23 surrendered their degrees, and 12 suspended their degrees. Next slide. This slide illustrates the outcome of provisionally approved degree programs. Our total institution count is 223, with the number of those who obtain accreditation went up by 1 from 73 last quarter to, from 74 last quarter to 75. Next slide. This slide illustrates the chosen accrediting agencies thus far. The change here now shows the institution that became accredited this fiscal year did so with ATS, the Association of Theological Schools. And that brings me to the end of the QEU the Quality of Education presentation. Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to present this information. I'm available for any questions you have.
Thank you, Manila. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none, moderator, would we please open for public comment? And as a reminder, it's comment only. Otherwise, we email bppe@dca.ca.gov if there's a question.
Hi, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you are a call-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. See no comments. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you, moderator. Next is item 5D. It's a discipline update, and that will be presented by Renee Walters. She's the discipline manager, and again, she'll be presenting this item.
Good morning. My name is Renee Walters. I'm the discipline unit manager for the Bureau, and I'll be presenting the discipline unit update for the 3rd quarter. To begin, I'll begin with the staffing update. We remain fully staffed at the moment. And now for our program update. Next slide. I'll now move on to the enforcement actions that took place during the 3rd quarter. The Bureau took 4 enforcement actions resulting from accusations filed against approved institutions. Accusations detail the grounds for disciplinary action based on violations of the Bureau's laws and regulations. The actions that were taken in the third quarter include 1 default revocation, which occurred as a result of an institution not responding to a formal accusation filed by the Bureau. We had 1 stipulated settlement for surrender in which the Bureau negotiated an agreement with an institution to resolve their accusation case without hearing. As part of this agreement, the institution agreed to surrender their approval to operate with the Bureau. We had 1 stipulated settlement for revocation in which the Bureau negotiated an agreement with an institution to resolve its accusation without a hearing. As part of the agreement, the institution agreed that the Bureau would revoke its approval to operate. And we had 1 stipulated settlement for public approval, which resolved an accusation filed against an institution without hearing. The Bureau settled the case through filing a public approval, which is a formal disciplinary action confirming the institution's violations of the Bureau's laws and regulations without impacting their approval status with the Bureau. Next slide. During the third quarter, the Bureau had 1 enforcement action resulting from a statement of issues. 1 statement of issues was withdrawn as the institution withdrew their appeal of the Bureau's denial and request for hearing, and the Bureau's denial was upheld. Next slide. In the third quarter, the Bureau did not issue any emergency decisions or automatic suspensions. As of December 31st, 2025, the Bureau has, as of the end of the quarter, the Bureau has 23 cases awaiting action at the Attorney General's office. Of these, 15 cases have been filed, are publicly available, and are currently pending adjudication. Next slide. In the third quarter, the Bureau issued 89 citations, bringing the total citations issued this fiscal year to 234. These include citations issued to 213 approved institutions, some of which have been cited multiple times, and 2 unapproved schools. Next slide. As mentioned in our last committee meeting, this slide was added at the committee's request and categorizes citations issued by referral type. These referral types include the following: internal administrative referrals in orange, which include violations such as failure to pay annual fees, submit an annual report, or pay or submit STRIF forms or applicable fees. Inspection-based referrals are in red, and these are referrals resulting from compliance inspections. Investigation-based referrals are in blue, resulting from formal investigations. As a reminder, if a citation includes both inspection and internal administrative violations, it will be categorized as inspection-based. Citations are only classified as internal administrative when no inspection or investigation violations are present. Most citations this fiscal year are attributed to compliance inspection referrals, though we expect the percentages to shift as the year progresses, and we expect them to align more closely with prior year's data. Next slide. Any disciplinary actions are available on the Bureau's website. And that concludes the discipline presentation. And with that, I can answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Renee. So committee members, are there any comments that you have at this time? Okay, hearing none, moderator, could we now open the queue for public comment?
Absolutely. This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. If you're joining us by calling, you may press *3 to raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning to make your comment. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no comments. I turn the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you, moderator. So now we're going to move on to agenda item 5F, and that's the complaint and investigations update presented by Daniel Rangel. He's the investigations chief, and he's going to be, again, presenting this agenda item.
Sorry, I think the slides are set up for compliance, so I'll hand it off to Eric Cassida, our chief over the compliance unit. Apologies.
And actually, Daniel, it's not your apology. I had gone inadvertently out of order, so that apology should come from myself. So if we could back up, please. Thank you so much, Daniel, for that prompt. It's compliance and annual report update, and that'll be presented by Eric Casida. The compliance chief, will be presenting.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Eric Cassida, the compliance chief. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today to share updates from the compliance and annual report units. I'll begin with the compliance unit. And before I get into the data from last quarter, I want to touch on staffing. The compliance unit recently had one compliance analyst retire, and we're now beginning the process of recruiting for or of refilling the position. And additionally, we are currently recruiting for a limited term NTC analyst to backfill a vacancy in anticipation of an upcoming retirement. And so next slide, please. The compliance unit has continued to build on a strong start to fiscal year 25-26, completing 114 inspections in the third quarter, which is down slightly from quarter two, in which we completed 118. But this is despite having a staffing vacancy, as previously mentioned. At this pace, we're still on track to surpass last year's total with a straight line projection of 462 inspections, which would be an increase of roughly 8% and set a new record for us for back-to-back years. Next slide. So far in fiscal year 25-26, we've conducted 231 unannounced inspections and 116 announced inspections. And staff assignments for the upcoming inspection period have already been made. And for the second quarter in a row, there's nearly an even split between announced and unannounced inspections. It's 58-69, which is pretty close compared to how the earlier quarters were. And then just as a general reminder, institutions must ensure that personnel are available during normal business hours to provide Bureau staff with access to required records during inspections. And next slide, please. This slide shows inspection results for thus far in fiscal year 25-26, broken down by announced and unannounced inspections. Outcomes fall into 4 categories: no action taken, notice to comply, enforcement referral, and both a notice to comply and enforcement referral issued. A couple of data highlights are unannounced inspections continue to identify more instances of non-compliance compared to announced inspections. In cases where no action taken was the outcome, has remained consistent thus far this fiscal year, and it now sits at 6.6%. And prior quarter, it was at 6.8%. So it's remaining pretty steady thus far in the fiscal year. And then, as mentioned in previous ACMs, we'll continue to monitor these trends for the remaining quarter of the fiscal year. Next slide. The Bureau continues to offer compliance workshops, which are held monthly. During quarter 3, we averaged about 75 attendees during each workshop, and the next workshop is scheduled for May 13th. And moving on to the annual report compliance unit update. As it relates to staffing, the annual report compliance unit currently has no vacancies. However, in saying that, we just started the process of filling an upcoming vacancy because of a staff promotion to another agency. Staff are continuing, and then I'll get into the actual annual report out. Staff are continuing to review and process the 2024 annual reports, which were due December 1st. And institutions that did not submit the report have been referred to the discipline unit for potential enforcement action related to failure to submit. And next slide, please. This is just a reminder that the annual report includes 2 components: submission of institution data and documents via the annual report portal, and submissions of financial statements by mail. And next slide, please. So this is the data as of April 15, 2026, which reflects the number of institutions that access the portal to begin the submission process. I think what it shows is that through continued outreach and enforcement actions against the institutions that failed to submit reports in prior years, we've seen a steady improvement in timely engagement. And over the past 3 annual reports, it's kind of remained consistent. Institutions have accessed the portal earlier and in greater numbers compared to prior years that aren't necessarily shown in this table, but like 2021, 2020, and our older data, which demonstrates a positive trend in compliance and responsiveness. And next slide. So CTC data submission, we're excited to report that for the first time in March 2026, the Bureau successfully submitted institutional and graduate award data to the Cradle to Career system by consolidating multi-year data sets for reporting years 2021 through 2024. And just for some background, the Cradle to Career data system is a statewide longitudinal data system that provides tools to help students reach their goals and offers information on education and workforce outcomes. In July 2022, institutions were notified of a new reporting requirement under California Education Code section 94892.6. This requirement applies to all institutions approved to operate by the Bureau and focuses on collecting specific information for every graduate who completed a program on or after January 1st, 2020. To support this process, a reporting template, which was an Excel spreadsheet, is available on the Bureau's annual report webpage and within the annual report portal under the graduation identification data tab. The template is designed to help institutions report data accurately and consistently, and all the information is submitted through the annual report portal. And so from January through March 2026, the Bureau worked closely with Cradle to Career to develop the file specifications and prepare all the required data for submission. And we were able to successfully do that late March with the support from DCA's OIS team, as well as working with Cradle to Career, and complete that data submission for the first time. So we're really excited about that. And next slide, please. The Bureau continues to offer school performance fact sheet workshops to help institutions understand and comply with relevant laws and regulations. And during Q3, we averaged about 23 attendees during each workshop, and the next workshop is scheduled for May 22nd. And institutions may register online at the Bureau's website. And as I conclude, I want to express my appreciation for the outstanding work coming from compliance and annual report units. Their hard work and expertise continue to elevate our teams and strengthen everything we do. And are there any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Eric. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Yeah, this is Joseph. I have a quick question for you, Eric. After the Bureau has submitted the data, the consolidated data to the Cradle to Career group, did you receive feedback on the effectiveness of that data or their ability to integrate it in the future dashboard publication reports?
We did not receive any feedback thus far. We worked very closely with them setting up this file specifications, as I touched on during the report out. But at this point, we have not received any feedback, or we were not given necessarily a timeline of when that data would be available on their dashboard. I'm sure it's a lot of work on their end. But as we get more information from them, we'll definitely give you an update on that.
And then a related question, did your staff do any reporting at all of the data, or did you simply consolidate the raw data and send it to them? Or have you done any internal reporting on the data?
We have not done any internal reporting on it. A lot of what we did was combining the data and then really cleaning up the data to make sure that it met that file spec. So it was really making sure it was consistent, especially in some of the data categories, like making sure that those things were consistent so it could be easily migrated over into the Cradle to Career system. But we have not done any internal reporting thus far with it either.
And I'm assuming that the institutional annual reports and school performance fact sheets were one of the base level data that you used to create to track placement rates, for example. Is that accurate?
It is. Sorry, can you say that one more time? It kind of cut out a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I'm assuming that the institutional annual reports and school performance fact sheets form the basis of the data specifically for graduate placement by program. Is that accurate?
For the C2C data?
Yes.
We didn't do much validation or comparing it to what was submitted on the school performance fact sheets. Just being fully transparent about that.
So what was the source of the data for graduate placement then, if not the institutional annual reports?
If it's okay, I would like to jump in a little bit here.
Sure.
The data that we submitted to Cradle to Career was the labor market data that's specified in our regulations, which is graduate award data. That data is separate from the institutional and program data that is submitted to the Bureau with the annual report. It's a different spreadsheet, which is specific just to primarily to the students, their social security or other identifier, the program that they graduated, how much they, I believe, have in loans, and the SOC code associated with that. The institutional and other program data, the Bureau currently uses the portal, I believe, that we, our dashboard that we worked with the Office of Data and Innovation to create, where we do look at that data and evaluate it for high risk factors as we move forward with determining which schools are at greater risk, so we can inform our enforcement activity at the Bureau. I'm not sure if that helps answer the question that you had.
Yes, thanks.
Other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, hearing none, moderator, would you please open the queue for public comment?
Absolutely. This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a call-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. See no comments. I turn the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And now we will move to the 5F agenda item, and that's the complaint investigation update. And that will be presented by Daniel Rangel. He's the investigations chief. So thank you, Daniel, again for coming on board.
No worries. Good morning, Chair Craker and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Rangel. I'm the chief of our complaint investigations unit. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the questions and requests from committee members Smith and Holt that were raised during our last ACM. We are actively working on responses and gathering the requested information and anticipate providing an update at our next advisory committee. So we do appreciate your patience and just want to acknowledge that we're still working on it. Regarding a staffing update for the complaint investigations unit, the unit remains fully staffed. However, we do expect some turnover in the near future as several team members have informed management of upcoming changes, each for positive reasons. Next slide, please. So as a brief comparison across fiscal years, we received 903 complaints in fiscal year 23-24, 1,039 in 24-25. Through quarter 3 of this fiscal year, we've received 978 complaints, averaging 326 per quarter. If this pace continues, we project receiving just over 1,300 complaints by the end of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. As of quarter 3 of fiscal year 25-26, non-jurisdictional complaints represent 15% of all complaints received, a notable decrease from last fiscal year's 27%. Conversely, complaints involving approved and unapproved schools have shown a slight increase compared to last fiscal year. Next slide, please. And this is our complaints closed slide. Through the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 25-26, we have successfully closed 823 complaints. Even with the recent management and team transitions, we remain on track to closed approximately 1,100 complaints, right in line with the previous 2 fiscal years. We are also off to a very strong start in Q4 and are confident that we will finish the fiscal year strong for this 25-26. Next slide, please. This is our let's see. Closed complaints. Sorry, I lost track. Excluding cases closed at intake, the most common timeframes for continue to be the 0 to 90 days and 1 to 2 years, with 169 and 97 days respectively. These results highlight our balanced approach of resolving new complaints promptly while making steady progress on older cases. Overall, 67% of complaints are resolved within 1 year when intake closures are excluded. We remain committed to further improving our efficiency and reducing case timelines across the board. Next slide, please. And then this is our complaint intake outcomes. Through Q3 of fiscal year 25-26, intake has referred 595 complaints for investigation. For comparison, 651 complaints were referred over the entire 24-25 fiscal year. This significant increase in referrals highlights the importance of sustaining and continuing to enhance our efficiency, a commitment we remain fully dedicated to. Next slide, please. Investigation outcomes. Outcome distributions have remained relatively stable from quarter to quarter. The largest category continues to be no confirmed violation and insufficient evidence, followed by consolidated. Consolidated cases represent investigations that combine multiple complaints against the same school by location, a practice designed to improve efficiency and minimize redundancies in the investigation process. Next slide, please. These are the most frequent cited allegations referred to the discipline unit following investigations completed through Q3. Next slide, please. And this slide shows the age of our pending caseload. We remain focused on reducing our oldest cases, even as we continue to receive a growing number of new complaints. And our pending caseload count. We ended Q3 with 637 pending cases. As you can see, the elevated intake levels have contributed to the increase in our pending caseload. We remain committed to maintaining strong case completion momentum as we work diligently to meet the rising demand and incoming complaints. And next slide. And I'll conclude by sharing some exciting news. Our Complaint Investigations Unit has been selected to receive a Superior Accomplishment Award in recognition of its outstanding performance over the past 3 years. Each year, the Merit Award Board, made up of the Department of Consumer Affairs leadership, including deputy directors, executive officers, and bureau chiefs, review and determine the awardees. The award includes several levels, such as certificate, silver, and gold, with the gold award personally selected by the DCA director. The Complaint Investigations Unit was selected for the gold award. We are incredibly proud of this team and its unwavering commitment to continuous growth and improvement, and to protecting students by upholding and enforcing the law. So congrats to the team. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the advisory committee.
Congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment. So that's excellent. Questions or comments from committee members?
This is Robin. Just congratulations. I've seen such an incredible improvement in all of your work in the complaint unit. So I understand why you're getting the well-deserved recognition. So thank you so much for helping so many students, and we really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from committee members? Okay, hearing none, I'd ask moderator, would you please open the queue for public comment?
Hi, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a call-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no raised hands. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll pause here to see if there's favorability towards taking a 10-minute break. So I would ask if those would be in favor of doing so. I'm seeing a thumbs up. So if we may, seeing the time here, if we could take a 10-minute break, and then when we reconvene, we'll reestablish quorum and continue. Is there anything else, Richie or Elizabeth, that needs to be covered prior to taking a break?
Just confirming we'll be back at 10:41.
Perfect.
Okay,
Time
thank
check
you.
is 10:31 now, so 10 minutes. Thank you all. Okay, welcome back, committee members. It is 10:41, so we'll resume. Hopefully everybody had a moment to stretch their legs. I will ask for assistance from Richie so that we can determine whether or not we've reestablished a quorum.
One second, let me get back on the OSAR slide. All right, I will call roll. Tess Crakier.
Aye. Yes.
Lee Farron.
Here.
Joseph Holt.
Present.
Kansen Chu.
Here.
Michael Zimmerman.
Here.
Robin Smith.
Present.
Noah Zinner.
Here.
All members are back.
Okay, thank you so much for that assistance. With that, we will move on to item 5G, the Office of Student Assistance and Relief update, presented by Yan Chow. He's the OSAR chief, and also Brian Vest, the OSAR manager.
Hi, good morning. My name is Yan Kao. I'm the chief of the Office of Student Assistance and Relief. I think Brian had to step in at our last advisory committee meeting because I was out due to illness, but it'll be all me today. So I want to say thank you to the advisory committee members for joining us, and welcome to Noah Zinner. I know you've done amazing work on behalf of students over the course of your career, and I'm really looking forward to working with you as you step into this new capacity. Before we go through our standard slides, I do want to recognize two things. One is a staffing note. I think this has been quarter three has been a really exciting growth quarter for OSAR. We started with a staff of 3, and thanks to work that we've undertook in the last quarter, we now have, as of mid-April, a full staff of 6 OSAR members. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of hiring, onboarding, and training. The last quarter was really kind of a chrysalis quarter for OSAR, and I want to thank our OSAR veterans who have helped us move smoothly through that process, as well as the new team members who have really jumped on board and started to do a lot of work already. So with that, if we can go to the next slide. This slide reflects some of the ongoing outreach and educational activities that we perform. Most recently, we did attend a couple of college fairs that we were invited to attend by members of the legislature. I do welcome opportunities to continue to do outreach that is tailored to the BPPE student population, private post-secondary student population. I will say that in doing outreach, we have started to pivot to do more in-depth work with the students who we know have already enrolled in a private post-secondary education, potentially been impacted by a closure or other unlawful activity, or students who have reached out to the Bureau in one of various channels. And so I'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. If we can go to the next slide. The next 2 slides are a reflection of our closure-related outreach efforts. And so this is OSAR activity in response to school closures that we're aware of. The reporting here is cumulative. I'll note on this slide that the look back period does give us an opportunity to see where past outreach connects with current OSAR and Bureau work across other areas. So for example, here in October, we did a workshop and prepared some resources on behalf of students who were impacted by the closure of Recording Radio, Film Connection, and CASA schools. And that is one of the schools where even students who were impacted and did not attend the virtual workshop, we are learning did benefit from some of that information, and we're seeing more applications from those students trickle in through the Student Tuition Recovery Fund. So it is helpful to kind of look back and have tabs on the outreach efforts we've done in the past. In the past, a lot of this outreach has been tailored to school closures where we have information indicating student impact. For example, when a school closes without completing its programs. If we can go to the next slide, this reflects more of the work that OSAR has done with respect to closure-related outreach in the last quarter. We have continued to do email and phone outreach. California Healthcare Skills Center, I'll just highlight that that is a school that impacted students because there was a vocational nursing program that lost professional licensure, and their approval with BPPE was coterminous with licensure to provide a vocational nursing program. So at the point where that school lost licensure, the 4 students who were enrolled and were at various points in their program were impacted. Students received conflicting information about the school's incomplete efforts to arrange a teach out. And so in that instance, we decide that we would reach out individually to each student to make sure they understood what their options were. If we can go to the next slide. This slide is a newer addition to OSAR's reporting. I'll say that it's really an opportunity to continue to respond to an advisory committee question, seeking more insight and transparency into the work that the Bureau does around processing school closures. I want to provide a huge shout out to Meg Christensen, who is a small but mighty unit into herself in working with schools that are closing or have closed to obtain the information that we need on behalf of students. I also do want to highlight that I think in part due to recent efforts and updates, Meg has increasingly been able to obtain information on behalf of students impacted by closures of institutions that are exempt. Institutions that are exempt under other Bureau regulations are still required to comply with the Bureau's closure regulations, and this helps to ensure that students have access to things like their records, proof of training, transcripts, and so on after a closure. And so I think that is a reminder that Meg has been really helpful in implementing in terms of getting some of these materials. And I think that it's something that we hope to continue to help students with as we gather this information. A few other notes. This is also an opportunity, I think, to highlight some of the work that the Bureau does that doesn't otherwise surface in reporting by, for example, the Department of Education of the many closures and changes in approval status that we processed in the past quarter. And this has kind of been an ongoing trend. There's only one that was a Title IV school that would have been reflected in the Department of Education's closure reporting. There were a couple of institutions where the closure was related to disciplinary action taken by the Bureau. And I will also note that this chart does not reflect all of the work of the closed school unit because we also received notices of closures in a few instances by schools that had sought and obtained approval, but that had not taken the steps to enroll students. This also does not reflect a category of changes in approval status that after internal discussions, we decided we would like to report moving forward. Here, I'm not aware of instances of those types of changes in approval status to highlight in the past quarter. However, I do know that we have some coming up, and this would include institutions that have a change in approval status because they are moving out of state, and so the change would be a change from approval to registered, and also changes in approval status where an institution is changing its business practices and moving from approval to non-approved exempt. So if we can go to the next slide. I want to touch then on some of the ongoing areas of OSAR work, and this slide and the next slide reflect the topics of many of the phone calls and emails that the OSAR staff respond to as kind of a clearinghouse of contact from students. Routinely, we see that the Student Tuition Recovery Fund application is something the students are seeking assistance with. And then the other large category is transcript assistance. I would say, in addition to transcript assistance, assistance obtaining student records in general, which might include things like a proof of training or a student ledger. So the student loan relief assistance, we have a little bit of an update later on, but I do want to spend a minute talking about transcript assistance. I understand that there were a couple of questions that came up at the last advisory committee meeting, including whether students experience challenges obtaining records from schools that have closed, and whether the Bureau has observed instances of students who are experiencing transcript withholding or withholding of other records as a mechanism for debt collection. So in speaking to my team, they said yes. The answer is yes to both. So I will say that post-closure, we try to keep records and to communicate to students information about the custodian of records, or where that hasn't been reported by a closing institution, the institutional representative and first point of contact for the institution. And of course, in some instances, the Bureau itself takes possession of student records and is able to respond to student requests for those records. We've had a number of internal conversations about the way that the Bureau as a whole and OSAR try to assist students who are seeking records. We have limited tools when a school that has already closed opts to not maintain records in a way that is helpful to students. But I will say that almost every aspect of the Bureau touches this issue. So if you look across the Bureau, students call our front desk, they reach out to our administrative team. We get student records requests and assistance requests in OSAR, the closed school unit, certainly the complete unit hears about it. And so we are having a number of conversations behind the scenes to make sure that we are coordinating so that we both provide assistance to students, regardless of what channel they use to seek assistance, and are capturing that information when students are encountering difficulty or debt collection as a barrier to their ability to obtain records. I will add that in part as a reflection of our thinking on school closures and student access to transcripts, OSAR is moving to a kind of a web-first approach to making sure that students have at least the best point of contact that is available within the Bureau, where there is an external custodian of records that was communicated in closure reporting. So on the OSAR website, we are starting to more consistently update information about custodian of records immediately following the school closure. So, in a sense, as we're receiving phone calls and emails, and if we can move to the next slide, while we continue to receive the highest volumes of student communications around STRIF and transcript assistance, our goal is, not necessarily to increase the numbers of requests we get, but to use the requests that we do get to help pinpoint where students are encountering barriers, and to try to seek systemic solutions where we can, so that students can obtain the resources and the assistance they need as smoothly as possible. So I definitely seek your input and thoughts if you're able to identify other ways that we can improve the ease of students being able to obtain STRIF relief and being able to obtain transcripts and records. But I do want to acknowledge the enormous work that occurs across the Bureau, and especially within our administrative team, where there is a huge amount of dedication to responding to those student requests as we channel them in that direction. If we can move to the next slide. Okay, student appointments conducted. I'm excited about this slide. What I want to share is that I have received some questions on, what's an appointment as opposed to a phone call, and when do we do an appointment? And I'll say that I think the best way to describe it is that oftentimes a phone call or an email is an opportunity for OSAR to respond to a specific inquiry that a student might have. What's the status of my STRIP application, or who do I contact to find a transcript? Student appointments respond to more complex student issues, where we take the time to try to understand more holistically what are the challenges that are prompting the student to reach out to OSAR or to reach out to the Bureau in a different capacity. And in that instance, we have a more in-depth conversation with the student, we try to understand their issues, and we try to deliver resources, whether it's OSAR directly, working with them to try to obtain a transcript, or going through different categories of information that could help them make an informed choice about how to continue and the next step of their post-secondary education, or directing them to other resources, referral resources, other states, increasingly working with students to direct them to resources where they have issues with loans. And so one thing that I'm really excited about is collaboration with the complaints unit, where we are taking an opportunity to look at the student assistance requests that are sometimes embedded in student complaints, so that we are addressing the accountability issues where an investigation finds a basis for that. And we are also trying to address the student issue or concern that prompted that individual to reach out to the Bureau. If we can go to the next slide. Finally, a huge area of OSAR work continues to be partnering with the Student Tuition Relief Fund team, who will be presenting in just a minute, but I wanted to highlight, one of our ongoing areas is working to provide assistance to students who are impacted by the closures of the Corinthian colleges across California. In this last quarter and continuing this quarter, we are really making a push to try to reach out to students who have had applications with the Bureau at different stages. And in this past quarter, we reached out to 135 students who had applications related to the closure of the Corinthian schools, and where we had previously noted that the student had applied for borrower defense relief for their federal loans and were waiting for the outcome of that borrower defense relief. We were able to obtain information from the Department of Education reflecting the update that borrower defense applications had been granted, and in some cases the discharge had been completed for a good chunk of the students. And in other instances, we were able to obtain responses from students, in many instances indicating that their federal loans had been discharged and their private loans had been canceled, which is consistent with expectations based on the litigation that previously occurred related to those schools. But we were able also to identify instances where students had not obtained full relief to address the economic loss they had in connection with their attendance at the Corinthian schools. And those are the students where we were able to work with a student to compile applications that reflected the remaining economic loss. And so I think that it was a great opportunity to see the way that California's tuition recovery fund really is a wraparound system that provides help in instances where the student would otherwise kind of fall through the cracks of other programs. To provide just one example, and this is a student who was assisted by our newest analyst, so I'm really proud of the work that she did there. But we had an instance of an individual student who had attended one of these schools, had federal loans, ended up fully repaying his federal loans out of pocket before the Department of Education was able to stand up a borrower defense system that processed applications for federal discharge. And so, in a way, it was a wildly unfair position that the student was in, where he would have been eligible for a federal discharge, but for the fact that the student was so diligent in trying to make repayments on federal loans following his experience. So, that was an instance where I think that it was very gratifying to have reached out to students. The student, had sought relief through other means, was not able to obtain it. And so through our outreach and work with students to compile applications, we were able to move forward with his TRIF application. And that work is continuing. We are continuing to look back at Corinthian students who've applied to STRIF now, where we did not previously obtain information or communication that they had applied for borrower defense in their federal loans. And our analysts are working to just be in contact with all the students who have applied, understand what their current situation is, and understand what remaining economic loss may exist. And I look forward to continuing to share updates on that with you. Next slide, please. So that concludes my prepared remarks. I will say that I think, especially as a student-facing office of the Bureau, I am very interested in the concerns that are surfacing with members of the advisory committee that work closely with students as well. And I really appreciate the input you provide and the direction that you provide where there are areas where you think that there are opportunities for OSAR to assist prospective students, current students, or former students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well done. Do we have questions or comments from the committee?
I have a quick question. First, thank you again, Jan. Always helpful information. And as usual, you're providing extra information that's actually really interesting and helpful. One question I have is, it goes back to the records after closure issue. And I really am happy to hear that you all are discussing how to deal with a lot of the issues students encounter internally, because I'm probably one of those people that's moving up the email number of emails you get about these issues, because we encounter all the time where we're trying to get documents from a closed school to be able to get a borrower relief from their federal loans and have a real problem finding old custodians of records. We often get from you addresses and contact information for custodians of records, but then we find out that we send a request and nobody responds. And so my question to you or to the appropriate person at the Bureau is, how does the Bureau monitor those custodians of records over time? Is there any kind of check on, a year after they've established themselves as custodian record, about whether they're still, responding to students? Are they still being paid? Because we run into a lot of problems where 5 years or 3 years after the fact, it turns out that they seem to have shut down and they're not providing records. So that's just the question I have.
Yeah, so if I can just restate, I think the question is, how does the Bureau monitor and keep track of updates where we learn that the custodian of records information that we have on file for a school that's closed is no longer accurate? And I'll say that we have implemented capability within Connect, so our system of record, to note those updates. So the idea is that, whatever channel that information comes in through, whether it's, OSAR working with the student or our administrative team working with the student, where we receive that information, that a channel of communication or a previously identified custodian of record is no longer responsive. The phone line is dead, the email bounce, whatever it is, we can now note that so that it's accessible in a central location again for the next person who is encountering a student request for records.
So just to clarify, my question is, what does the Bureau affirmatively do without waiting for information? So, does it monitor itself? Does it check on, call the custodian of record, find out what's going on before they get information that they're not responding anymore? And the reason I ask is, if it would be helpful for the Bureau to monitor, I realize that's taking on more tasks, but to monitor, because if they find out a custodian of record is running out of money and is no longer providing service, or is about to not provide any records, they can maybe get the records from the custodian. And so that's one question, right? What did they do affirmatively? And then the second question is, when they do find out a custodian is no longer providing records, what do they do? Do they try to contact the custodian to get the records, to figure out what's going on? So those are kind of the questions I have.
Yeah, that's really great. I will take that back. I think that that's a really interesting direction for us to go to. I will provide a shout out to Brian Vest, our manager, who has suggested at least reaching out at the point where school has recently closed and we're presenting information about the custodian of records, that point of contact on the OSR website, that we go through and we call those numbers to make sure that, you know, at least at the point where we're initially presenting that information to the public, that it is accurate. But I think the issue of kind of that lingering need for closure, for access to records across all of the schools that have kind of enrolled students, closed, continue to hold student records or have a legal obligation to hold records. I think that's something definitely for the Bureau to explore. I will say that there has been some discussion over the course of our sunset review and some discussion about policy updates so that we would be able to potentially identify instances where records may be at risk or student ability to access records may be at risk. And we're considering approaches for the Bureau to identify risk and take on records. But that is, that's a process that we're in progress at the moment. Thank you for the question.
Other questions or comments from the committee? I know how I have one, Tess Craker. Going back to the slide with the phone calls, I thought I heard you say that those were incoming phone calls. Is that accurate?
Our reporting is on a combination of incoming and outgoing calls. We do make an effort to eliminate repeat calls. So it's our best effort at identifying unique phone calls or phone calls that are about unique topics. So for example, if a student has submitted a complaint and then subsequently calls in with a strict question, that may show up more than once.
Okay, I think it just sparked a bit of curiosity on my end to see if there might be some value to collect some data on unsuccessful connections. So I'm sure calls come in, calls go out, but how many students maybe initially outreach to the Bureau for assistance, but then subsequently don't pick up when there's follow-up for a successful connection. So any
Right.
data in that end, I think I would just be curious if that does represent a large cohort or a small cohort. That would be something that I would appreciate seeing.
Yes, sure. I will say that of the calls that are reported in that set, the vast majority of them are incoming calls that were, you know, picked up at the point of contact, or outgoing calls where the outgoing calls include responses to voicemail. The reporting that we do captures just a fraction of OSAR work. So there are certainly instances, especially when we are responding to a call and then setting up an appointment where the student and the OSAR representative are not able to connect, where there's a missed appointment or something like that. And we are trying to think about ways to try to bridge those gaps. But the calls that are reported on that chart represent kind of a fraction of OSAR's overall calls, and those do tend to be calls where there was a live connection.
Okay, it sounds like it would be, I don't want to create any additional work. It sounds like that's a very, very small cohort, if at all. So, you know, thank you for all the efforts. I just really wanted to raise it in case there was a cohort that needed some additional attention, but thank you so much.
Sorry.
Other questions or comments by committee members? Okay, thank you very much. And moderator, would you please open the queue for public comment?
Of course, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a dialed-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are showing instructions and we'll give you a moment. There's one raised hand. AA, you're going to be seeing an unmute request on your screen. Please click on that to make your comment. You'll have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning.
Hello, this comment's for Jan. I'm one of the regulated institutions and love to direct my students to OSAR. It's in our catalog, everything that's required regulatory wise. But being a school that's open for 10 years and attending these committee meetings, I think as a comment, since the students have an OSAR, maybe perhaps the institutions should have an equivalent OSAR just for the institutions. And for example, when there's a closure, if institutions have their own OSAR in essence, then OSAR and the institutions could then send their records over for those students for when an institution closes. And some of the things I've been running into is privacy laws. Some students don't want information released, things like that. And I know our transcript services that it is what it is, but I was just thinking after attending a lot of these committee meetings is it's maybe something that an OSAR for the institutions might suffice. So that's my thought.
Thank you. I will say that if you want to reach out to discuss that particular instance, if you have an idea for the Bureau to be able to work together with an institution to ensure that students are able to access their records, please do reach out and I'd be happy to take that offline.
I see no other comments. I turn the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the comment. So with that, we're going to move to the Student Tuition Recovery Fund update, and that will be by Yvette Johnson. She's the administration chief, and also Janelle Quayle. She's the STRIF manager, and they will be presenting at this time.
Good morning, committee members. Yvette Johnson, the chief of the Student Tuition Recovery Fund. As I like to introduce Janelle Quayle once again, who is the manager of the Student Tuition Recovery Fund. She works with staff on a day-to-day basis. So the purpose of the STRIF is to relieve or mitigate, I'm sorry, I'm trying to turn my camera on, is to relieve or mitigate an economic loss suffered by a student while enrolled in a Bureau-approved program. The STRIF team is responsible for processing applications received from these students. The students have 4 years from the date of the occurrence that qualified them for STRIF to file an application. And so during this time, and actually since forever, the STRIF unit has been working to produce efficiencies so that we can process our applications more quickly and efficiently. The unit works very closely with the Office of Student Assistance and Relief. And as Jan spoke about in her presentation, the OSAR has implemented the process of working closely with the students and helping to ensure that all applications that are received from the students are complete. This allows the Student Tuition Recovery Fund unit to process the applications more quickly because we're not having to go back and forth with the students trying to collect the information. So by the time the application gets to the Student Tuition Recovery Fund unit, it is complete and we are able to process that economic loss. So it's been great working with and training with the OSAR unit to make sure that we're on the same page and we are efficiently working with the students. As something else that I like to announce is that I know that in past presentations I've spoken about the staffing issues that we've had. I'm pleased to announce that as of last month, we were able to add an office technician to our team. This is great. Hannah Reynoso. She is the frontline person for the Student Tuition Recovery Fund team. With Hannah being on board, of course, right now she's going through training, and we've been taking other staff to help train her. But the goal is that when Hannah is fully trained, she'll be able to take the load off of the analysts, who can then also focus on doing their processing the applications. And so it's great. Hannah's been a great asset. And we still have one analyst position that's vacant, and we're attempting to fill that as soon as possible. So we're hoping that by the next quarter, when we report out, that position will be filled as well, and we will be fully staffed. So right now I'm going to introduce you to Janelle Quell, who will be providing the presentation for today for the STRIF unit.
All right. Good morning. Sorry, hold on. All right. So good morning, committee members. Like Yvette said, my name is Janelle Quayle, and I'm the manager over the STRIF unit. I'm so glad to be with you all here today. So I'll go over some of our quarterly stats. So if we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is STRIF claims received. So at the end of Q3, we received 44 claims, which is about the same that we received last quarter. And so the majority of students are still submitting their claims via online via Connect. However, we still do have some students who are submitting their applications via paper. Just as a note, students have up to 4 years after their qualifying event to submit a STRIF claim. So not all claims that we received within this quarter are from schools that have closed recently. They could be, schools that have closed previously. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this slide, the data shows that STRIF is making steady, meaningful progress while we're responsibly managing its funds, and then ongoing supporting the Bureau's mission by prioritizing outstanding and high volume claims. So in Q3, we processed a total of 148 claims, which is 37% more than we did last quarter. So a shout out to my team, and also collaborating with OSAR as well. So of the 148 claims, that includes claims that were deemed approved, denied ineligible, and also unable to contact. So we approved this quarter 32 claims with a total payout amount of $369,431.54. And approved claims are claims, it's where it was determined that the student suffered an economic loss. We also deemed one claim ineligible because it didn't meet the criteria for STRIF eligibility according to California Education Code 94923. 8 claims were denied because the students were unable to provide evidence of their economic loss. Just with a note with that, both denied and ineligible claims, students still have up to 60 days to appeal the decision if they don't agree. And then also this quarter, STRIF and OSAR have remained committed to processing Corinthian College claims. So that includes older claims that were previously pending a borrower's defense decision. So through collaborative outreach efforts, we again attempted to contact every student affected using multiple methods. That includes email, mail, phone, and then LexisNexis searches to obtain updated contact information when needed. So despite these extensive efforts, 107 students did not respond and were classified as unable to contact. Their claims that are unable to contact, if the students reach out, their claims can be reopened at any time if they want to process their claim or need further assistance from us. Next slide, please. So this slide is current STRIF claims. Current pending claims are claims that have not been adjudicated or a final decision has not yet been reached. So I'll just go down this list. Claims that are awaiting manager review, that's 83 claims. Claims that analysts are currently reviewing, that's 134. Claims in waiting for response are claims where the analyst is waiting on students to provide missing documentation that is needed to process their claim, and that's 46. And claims in queue are claims that have not yet been assigned to an analyst, that's 513. And for a total of pending claims of 776. And next slide.
Okay, I'll be doing this next slide, which is the claims that we have pending at the State Controller's Office. For this quarter, we don't have any claims pending. We did process claims. However, those claims were sent over to the State Controller's Office and they were paid throughout the quarter. So at the end of the quarter, there were none waiting. So the total claims paid out for this quarter were 35, with the total of $585,265.18. And the total STRIF balance is at the fund balance is at the bottom of the slide. Okay, next slide, please. So this is our large impact closures. I'm happy to announce that the numbers have come down as far as pending claims. As Yan and Janelle spoke about regarding the focus on Heald and Corinthian, based off of that, we were able to bring those numbers down. And then we have the pending 50 for this Silicon Valley claims. And that is the end of the report. And I'd like to thank the STRIF staff for all of their hard work and their continued focus and making process improvements and implementing efficiencies that help us to be able to move quicker with these student claims and to be able to assist these students sooner rather than later. So thank you, everyone. I welcome questions from the committee.
Thank you, Yvette and Janelle. Do we have any comments or questions from committee members? I do have a comment and a quick question. First of all, congratulations on the improvement. I think you had said there were 38% more claims processed or something similar, but so congratulations on those outcomes and achievements. That's fantastic. More of a curiosity, what would be an example of what a student would need to provide to represent that they had gone through or experienced an economic hardship?
Okay, I can answer that question. Sorry, I apologize. The first part of what you were saying, I didn't hear, but I caught the last end. So you're just wanting to know what a student would need in order to be eligible?
Yes, I was more curious to see what would be an example, if you will, of what would be typical that they would provide that would be considered an eligible economic hardship.
Yeah, hopefully I'll try to answer this, and if not, I can re-clarify. So I guess, first of all, eligibility, they have to meet certain criteria, like I mentioned in 94923. So in order for them to even consider if they're eligible, they have to have attended a Bureau approved school. They have to be enrolled. So like they have to provide proof of enrollment at that school. And then also that they meet the requirements of being a California resident or residency. And then once we identify that, they also have to have an ITN or a social security number, which is required by the state controller's office if they do get approved. And then as far as proof of economic loss, we have to have proof that they actually paid a certain amount to the school. So that can be evidence as far as like credit card statements, bank statements, financial ledgers, receipts, copies of receipts. But if they want, you know, $10,000 and they say that that's what they paid, we need actual proof that they paid that to the school and under their name. And then also another one is timely filing. And so as previously mentioned, they have to have submitted their claim within 4 years of their qualifying event. So it's really proof of enrollment and then proof of economic loss, which like receipts and things like that.
Okay, that's super helpful. I was more curious if it was just as you described, more of a factual process, or if they have to prove that it was a hardship to them personally based on their personal circumstance. So it sounds like following the steps, they would be what you described, eligible to receive funds.
Correct. And there are different like qualifying events. So the most common one is economic loss or just proof that they didn't benefit from their education was if you were enrolled within 120 days. So you're going to a school and they end up closing. So there's other eligibility categories that they can fall under, but that's the most common one. So it's also they have to establish that they did have a loss of not obtaining the education that they signed up for.
Thank you very much, and great job. The first part that you may have missed was just congratulating on the positive outcomes and reducing. I think you had commented by 38% or down to 38%. So just wanted to commend the group on that.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions from the committee? Okay, hearing none, I would ask the moderator to please open up queue for public comment.
Hi, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you are joining us by call-in, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no comments. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you also, everybody, for the updates. We're now moving on to agenda item 6, and this will be a status update and discussion related to the following regulatory matters and regulatory tracker. And Parker Strohmeyer, Regulations Specialist, will be presenting this agenda item.
Yes, thank you, Chair Craker. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee today. Obviously, since our last meeting, our chief has departed to the California Education Interagency Council, but we still have a lot of important work to do here and look forward to continuing that work. Can we go to the next slide for the tracker, please? So some recent developments with Bureau regulations include finalizing regulations pertaining to unapproved activity. This relates to how administrative fines are set for institutions operating without Bureau approval. The changes impact sections 75020 and 75030 of Title V, Division 7.5 of the California Code of Regulations. And the changes can be viewed in full on the Bureau's website. And the regulations are effective July 1st, 2026. So good to get that one across the finish line. For catalog requirements, the Bureau continues to develop this regulatory package, and relevant documents have been submitted to the acting director for review in March of 2026. For use of the term university, this package has also been submitted to DCA. It's not actually at the time of this tracker, it wasn't up to the director level, but now this one is also at the director's desk for review. Minimum operating standards financials also continues to be worked on and developed after last quarter's advisory committee meeting discussions. The two other packages for additional discussion today with approval by means of accreditation and adding Business Professions Code 480.2 provisions are two other packages that we are making great progress on and continue to work on. And I look forward to discussing those now. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So I'd first start with Business Professions Code, or BPC, section 480.2 provisions, and adding this to the regulations. Existing Bureau regulations refer to BPC section 480 instead of 480.2. Prior to July 2020, BPC Section 480 allowed the Bureau to deny a license to an applicant if they were convicted of a crime, if that crime was substantially related to the qualifications, functions, or duties of that business or profession. In September of 2018, AB 2138 was chaptered into law, and this is what became effective in July of 2020. This modified BPC Section 480 to limit the time frame in which an applicant may be denied a license based on a criminal conviction to 7 years. At this time, BPC 480.2 was added to the Business Professions Code, preserving the authority of the Bureau to deny a license to an applicant if they've been convicted of a crime and not limiting the Bureau to that 7-year limitation. As a result, this has caused some outdated references in Bureau regulations to a section of the Business Professions Code that does not affect the existing authority of the Bureau. So this proposed package updates the reference in Bureau regulations from BPC 480 to 480.2. It doesn't alter any requirements of institutions or change the existing authority of the Bureau. The proposed regulations are intended to ensure regulatory consistency with changes made by statute. We plan, as you can see on the screen, proposed Section 100. So we are planning to pursue this as a Section 100 change without regulatory effect because it's just updating the reference. However, there's the chance that these changes might need to go through the full rulemaking process and just go out for a public comment. So we're prepared to switch course to that avenue if needed as well. And of course, updates will be shared accordingly if that's needed. So the Bureau welcomes committee member input and feedback on this package. Thank you again. I'll turn it back over to the committee at this time for questions on this package related to 480.2.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay, hearing none, moderator, would you please open the queue for public comment?
Absolutely. This is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a dial-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. See none, I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Great, thank you so much. Before we move on to approval by means of accreditation, just wanted to take a moment because I believe Kevin Powers, the Assembly representative, may have joined us. So I wanted to recognize and acknowledge your presence here today, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Tess.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we will jump back into Agenda 6B, approval by means of accreditation.
Awesome. Yeah, let's get started. I know this package is one that we've discussed a few times in this setting now, including last year where we presented proposed regulatory text pertaining to ABMA applications. And after receiving feedback partially from members on this committee, we've made some additional changes. So I would just refer to pages 89 to 96 for updated text on this regulatory package. Some of the changes that we've made include ownership certification in B2B. The Bureau has modified this requirement to be clearer and to require an institution to provide certification of its owners, including the name of each person, as defined in Section 94855 of the code. So that doesn't limit to just individual people. It also factors in businesses, and to the percentage of the institution that is owned or controlled by each person. And this approach aligns with prior discussions to obtain verified ownership information from accredited institutions. The Bureau also proposes adding the form of business organization to the required items that are certified by the accrediting agency. This change is needed for licensing purposes if an institution desires to make a substantive change to its form of business organization, which must be approved by an institution's accrediting agency, or to verify that Bureau enforcement actions issued to an institution are issued correctly. So we're proposing to add that as well. And finally, changes to this package include additional specificity regarding reduced credit bachelor's degree programs, which primarily affects Section 71850. So for that, I would refer to the memo on that topic. So that's just before the text beginning on page 89. So if you go to page 88 of the meeting materials, this memo on reduced credit bachelor programs speaks to this issue that we're seeing more across private post-secondary education and really higher education in general. Reduced credit bachelor's degree programs, generally understood as bachelor's degree programs requiring fewer total units within a shorter time frame than traditional 4 years bachelor's degree programs, are growing in prevalence across the country. Many factors are driving this trend. As students seek more affordable pathways to degrees, institutions seek to reduce barriers to degree completion, and employers seek to prioritize skills and workforce competencies. Reduced credit bachelor's programs present an innovative program model designed to achieve a degree with lower cost and faster completion time than a traditional bachelor's program. As of March 2026, nearly 60 institutions are planning, considering, or have already launched these programs in some disciplines. Several accrediting agencies in other states have published guidance or other documents regarding reduced credit bachelor's programs if institutions seek to offer them. This guidance admittedly varies. For instance, some accrediting agencies require a certain number of credits in a reduced bachelor's degree program, while others expect an institution to explain their reduction, but do not necessarily define a minimum number of credits. Generally, an institution must continue to demonstrate breadth and depth of its curriculum in a reduced credit bachelor's degree program to achieve the same objectives and outcomes as a traditional bachelor's degree program. One accreditor specifically requires a reduced credit bachelor's degree program to be named as something other than a baccalaureate or bachelor's degree, something like a undergraduate specialist degree. And so as a result of all of this, the Bureau is assessing how to incorporate reduced credit bachelor's degree programs into the Private Post-Secondary Education Act's regulatory framework. And we seek feedback from the committee as we consider changes to allow these programs at accredited institutions, which is why it's part of this regulatory package. So there are 4 discussion questions on this memo on page 88. So I would invite committee member feedback on those discussion questions, but also if there's any other thoughts on reduced credit bachelor's degree programs or the ABMA package in general. Thank you again for the opportunity today, and I'll turn it back over now.
Thank you, Parker. Comments or questions from committee members?
Yeah, I have one actually, and I guess obviously new to the committee, so not aware of prior discussions, but I would hope and assume that when the BPPE is reviewing these reduced credit programs, that they are also cross-referencing the requirements for the professional licensure and certifications that those programs require. In other words, making sure that somebody who enrolls in a program that's reduced credit is still getting the minimum number of credits required to get, let's say, a social work degree or to sit for the NCLEX. And I'm not sure under the BPPE's regulatory structure how the professional licensure criteria and the BPPE requirements intersect, but I know that that's been an issue with a lot of the students we've spoken with who have ended up with a degree that didn't meet their expectations in terms of what it would set them up to do.
Valuable feedback. Thank you. That's definitely something that we can look at. So just to make sure that I'm understanding your comment correctly, you're essentially saying that when we are looking at this concept, reduced credit bachelor's degree programs, to make sure that if it's permitted, again, at only an accredited institution, but if an accreditor allows that and we're going to permit that, to make sure that if it's a program that leads to licensure, that program, if a student enrolls, is going to be able to obtain their license. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, in California.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'll just chime in and I'll second Noah's comment. I think that's a really important distinction. Speaking from like the accreditor's perspective, I know there's a lot of discussion, at least at my accreditor, about these reduced credit bachelors. And, when these are required to go through a substantive change with my accreditor, as I'm assuming probably most accreditors, I would hope so. And there's quite a bit of discussion on, when we see these applications, do they meet the breadth and scope required to obtain employment in this field. So I have a lot of faith in the accreditors' ability to continue to do that, but I do think having some safeguard at the BPP level to make sure that a degree isn't somehow getting approved by an accreditor that doesn't meet the minimum licensure requirements for the state, that doesn't hurt, but and it would be beneficial for the students and their protection. But I do feel, that this is something that the accreditors are paying close attention to and are evaluating with a critical eye, in my experience.
Thank you, Michael. So would you say, so we have that question number 2, if the Bureau establishes its own minimum requirements, how should those be determined? So it sounds like, would you say licensure requirements might be one consideration for that? And do you have any other things that maybe should be considered if we establish our own minimum requirements there?
I think like the state statutory requirements are a good baseline, and they're clear, they're easy for everybody to understand. We kind of get out of the realm of speculation, and have something very concrete to point to.
And this is Joseph Holt. I have a couple of thoughts, Parker, for consideration. First being that, as you know, this is kind of a bleeding edge issue in the educational space, and the accreditors are wrapping their heads around it, currently, and there's a diversity of thought on that. In that regard, I think only very objective guardrails would be the best, most prudent approach for the state, rather than deferring, for example, to your quality of education unit and the Bureau to do the work that the accreditors are already doing, basically. And so it's not really a settled matter of higher ed policy. And it's something that from a variety of stakeholder groups are pursuing for good reason, but the dust is still very much in the air. And I don't know that the BPP is well positioned to be, an innovator in that space. I think it's particularly regarding educational quality requirements. I think it should closely follow the development of that issue at the accreditors. However, echoing, as my colleagues have said here, a clear bright line standard would be any program purported to lead to licensure has to meet those requirements, right? And because some of those are in fact different in California or specialized in California, that's a good simple guard rule that the Bureau is well positioned to put in place. And I also, just real quickly, in regards to number 1, I do think that it would be best for the Bureau to restrict this to accredited institutions in the near term. Long term, after it becomes more of a settled matter in higher education, policy, maybe some years from now, the QE unit could take it on, and you could maybe offer the ability for full approval institutions as well. But in the near term, I agree that it's prudent to restrict to accredited institutions.
Thank you for that feedback, Joseph. I really appreciate it. And I think one word that's come up has been guardrails. So I'm also curious, we're talking about those licensure requirements, I think, has been something that comes up. But what about disclosures, that other side of like the program can meet licensure, but the student has also been informed about the requirements. So, is there any feedback that you or other committee members would have about how to disclose reduced credit bachelor's degree programs to prospective or current students or other members of the public?
I suppose there wouldn't be any harm in a very simple statement of acknowledgement that this is a reduced credit bachelor's degree program. Because bachelor's degree is obviously a well-established standard from many years, and so a distinction recognizing that. For example, you mentioned, Parker, that one accreditor is actually looking at a different naming convention, right? Enforcing that institutions call it something different. It could be that all accreditors don't fall on that, and it might be in the state's interest for the awareness and the disclosure of students' perspective that it is a reduced credit bachelor's degree program, to distinguish it from a non-reduced credit. I don't know, it's like well, there's a lot of different versions of milk that you can get at the grocery store too. Like what version is this specifically, and is it labeled?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, kind of following that analogy too, there's different like places, like you can get different alternatives of milk at the grocery store, and one might be located just a few shelves down the aisle, but they're in different spots, and you have to look at different places. And similarly, you know, we have enrollment agreements, catalogs, institutions have their websites. So where are these disclosures found? Where are students looking to get that information? So can't say I you know, won't bring this issue up again or have these questions again in the future as we continue thinking about them, but really appreciate the feedback there. So thank you again.
Thank you. Great comments, great feedback. Other comments or questions from committee members? Okay, moderator, would you please open up the queue for public comment?
Of course. Hi, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you are a dial-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We do have a comment. R. Brown, you're going to be given 3 minutes with a 30-second warning to make your comment. Please click on the unmute yourself button and to make the comment. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Robert Brown, and I'm the president and CEO of the University of West Los Angeles, a for-profit institution under the governance of BPPE, but also accredited by WAS in the California State Bar. I have been the president for over 28 years. I have been a member of the California Bar since 1977, and I have owned UWLA since 2011. I started my career as a corporate business banking lawyer in the 70s. I was general counsel of several major financial institutions in the early years of my career, and I was thrust into academia by accident. I only give you that by way of background. UWLA is composed of a School of Law and a School of Business. The School of Law is Cal Bar accredited, and thus upon qualifying for admission, our students do not have to take the baby bar and are qualified upon graduation to take the California State Bar. Over 30% of our faculty are sitting California Superior Court judges. We were founded in 1966, and we're about to celebrate our 60th anniversary. We have over 400 students in the School of Law. Our School of Business is a more recent addition to our university. At present, we have approximately 200 students in our School of Business. We offer a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in leadership management and technology. As I mentioned, our university is WAS accredited, and we are applying to WAS to offer a 3-year bachelor's degree in business administration. However, as I have mentioned in our accompanying position paper, which I commend to you, we have requested expressions of interest from prospective students who might be interested in acquiring an accelerated 90 units bachelor's degree, and the response has been massive. WAS has also invited proposals for the accelerated degree. Obviously, they have noted that UWLA would have to acquire either a waiver or exemption from the regulatory framework of BPPE for the degree to be accredited by WAS. Right now, that minimum credit is 120 units. I would like to commend to your attention the position paper that we have submitted, as I said before. UWLA prides itself on being a community-based institution that is elite but not elitist. For over 60 years, we have prided ourselves in offering affordable, accessible, quality education, in particular to non-traditional students attempting to pursue their higher education. Our students come from all backgrounds and walks of life. But I would like to talk to you very briefly about a student who unfortunately did not get to
30
attend
seconds.
UWLA and afford themselves of those programs. That student was me. I grew up in South Central LA. I did not have family support system. My family was not in that picture, and my mom had to work. I'm telling you about a little bit about me because the most difficult part of my academic journey was in acquiring my general education from the community colleges. It took me over 4 years because of the length of the program. Howard went on to be accepted by UCLA Law School ultimately. I just would like to add that these programs are very important for our communities. They reduce costs, they promote accessibility.
I see no other comments. I turn the floor back to you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brown. And just as a reminder on the timing limitations that I announced at the beginning of the call, but please feel free to also email for the bppe@dca.ca.gov or communicate back in another means, because The intent wasn't to cut you off, but rather to follow the guidelines of the time period set forth. So with that, I wanted to also thank Parker for the updates, and we are now going to move on to agenda item 7, sunset review and legislative update. This will be presented by Ryan Tatcher. He's the legislative project manager.
Thank you, Tess, and you actually pronounced my last name perfectly.
Well, there's a miracle yet to be had today, so I've identified a need in my pronunciations, which will be worked on prior to the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about kind of where the Bureau is in the sunset review process, and then I'll talk a little bit about particularly the sunset bill. So I gave an update at the meeting in February, and at that point, all that had happened was the Bureau had turned in its sunset report and was still waiting on the next step. So there have been several things that have happened since then. So in March, there was the sunset hearing, and because of kind of the unique position the Bureau is in, most DCA boards get a joint committee hearing with 2 business and professions committees from the Assembly and the Senate. BPPE gets 4 assemblies doing a joint committee hearing. They also have the higher education committees. So you got hearing all to yourself. It was Debbie and acting director Christine Lawley from DCA were answering questions during the hearing, and that went for about an hour and a half. There were a lot of questions, some expected, some unexpected. That's the way these things always go. But I think Debbie and Christine did a great job answering all their questions that they had. I think everyone was satisfied with how that hearing went. So that was in March, and then another step that happened was there's something called the background paper, which is something that was created. It's created by the committees. It has some background information about the Bureau. And then the important part is it has a series of questions that require written answers. So that was sent out shortly before the hearing, and Bureau staff worked hard and did a great job, I think, in answering all the questions that were required for that background paper. And we got that turned into the committees on time. So thank you, committee staff, for that. And then that just mostly leaves the bill itself. So the Bureau Sunset Bill, it's AB 2771. It is currently moving through the legislature. It's actually being heard today in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. So it should pass out of that today, and then it will go to the Assembly floor, where sometime in the next coming weeks, they will vote on it and it will move on to the Senate. So moving backwards a little bit, the bill, when it was first introduced, had no substance. It was kind of a placeholder bill. A little bit later, actually pretty early for what we're used to these days, it had a lot of substance added to it. And so what's in the bill right now is straight from the Bureau Sunset Report. So in the Bureau Sunset Report, there was something called the new issue section, and that's where they listed all the legislative changes that the Bureau was requesting. And there were a lot of them in this case, 28, 30 something. And, all over the board, but they were things that generally just help, make licensing and enforcement more efficient, more effective, a lot of different areas there. And the bill right now, it takes most of the suggestions that the Bureau have made it into the bill so far. There's nothing else in the bill that are not from the Bureau Sunset Report that may or may not change. The biggest thing that is not in the bill at the moment does not have anything related to fees. Obviously, that is a large area of concern for the bureaus. It was a first item in the new issue section. I'm not surprised. Don't be worried that those fees are not in there yet. There's still plenty of time to amend that in. As you can imagine, that's an area where there's been more discussion around it with various stakeholders. And so time goes on, at some point, I am sure that they will be added in there. can't tell you if it'll be exactly what the Bureau recommended or not, but I think that the Bureau's recommendations are solid and were supported by fee studies and, do a good job of creating an equitable way to fix this fund imbalance. So those discussions are ongoing, and hopefully those will be amended into the bill soon. The bill was also heard in a couple of policy committee hearings, and there was Bureau staff there helping to answer questions, and the bill passed through there. So everything seems to be going pretty smoothly with it right now. It probably will not be passed until the early fall. I believe in late August or beginning of September is the deadline for passage, and then it'll be signed by the governor. So it will continue to move through the process until that time, and we may see some more amendments. But that is where things stand. And again, I want to thank the entire Bureau staff. Have been great and very helpful in shepherding this thing through. So that being said, happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions from committee members? Okay, thank you. Right,
I'm sorry,
ahead.
this is Kevin Powers. I was trying to raise a hand, but I couldn't find the button. I just want to echo what Ryan said from the other side, having worked on that background paper and analyzed the bill and Assembly Higher Education. Just tremendously grateful to the Bureau and everyone who worked on that excellent sunset report. It provided us just a ton of options in terms of putting things into the actual policy vehicle itself, and was great in doing our analyses, and then the 50-page background paper that we did for the sunset review hearing. So again, just thank you all for that. And I'll just echo that the bill as it goes through will go to the suspense file. It'll go to the floor for in the next few weeks, really, to get through the assembly deadline. Historically, we haven't put substance into the bill normally until the second house. And this time around, because there was so much from the sunset report, we were able to move that process along early. And I'll just echo that fee conversations are ongoing. Historically, we've never put that in. I mean, it's early now to have as much policy in there, but typically that's something that that will come later. So thanks again.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from committee members? Okay, hearing none. Moderator, would you please open the queue for public comment?
Sure, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment, please click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a dial-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. You'll have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning to make your comment. We do have a raised hand, AA. You're going to be seeing an unmute request on your screen. Please click on that to make your comment. Thank you.
Hello, Ryan. I'm one of the regulated institutions and did read through the sunset report by the Bureau and then also the background report. And I went through it in depth and found that there is mentioning of unadopted regulations that don't exist in the law. And I've noticed that some of the citations were generated on institutions wide. So I'm curious of where that's going to go from the Bureau side. I guess the best comment for that one is how are institutions being cited on unadopted standards if it's found within the Bureau's own sunset report as well as the committee's sunset background report.
And just as a reminder, thank you so much for the comment, and we will definitely have that noted.
I see no other comments. I turn the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And I know we're about to conclude before, and thank you, Ryan, for the report out, very much so. Before
Thank you.
we move to our last agenda item, I did want to make note that Lee Farron had a prearranged need to step away from at noon to 12:30. So Lee, I don't want to keep you from, even though we're about to conclude, I don't want to make you late for your needed items. So Lee will be signing off with us now while we move forward to conclude our meeting today. Thank you, Lee.
So much. I was just about to message you. I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Absolutely. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the agenda 8, which is the future agenda items. So this is an opportunity for committee members and the public to suggest any future agenda items. We will begin with the committee. Do any members have suggestions for future agenda items at this time? Okay, hearing none, I would ask the moderator to please open the queue for public comment.
Hi, this is the moderator. If you would like to make a comment for any future agenda item, you may look for the raise hand icon at the bottom of your WebEx screen. And if you're a call-in public member, you may press *3 to raise your hand. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no raised hands. I return the floor back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much. This moves us to agenda number 9. So I just want to thank you all for attending and also for bearing with me as I move through my first meeting as chair. So I will work to refine some of the areas identified as I work through this meeting today. Our next advisory meeting is going to be scheduled for August 19th, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Tress.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. This webinar is being ended right now. Thank you.